Brother Chris Macon.
Thanks, Brother Hrud. Brother, that song, Lift Every Voice, believe it or not, that's been in my head all night. I don't know why, but that just resonated in my head all night long. And okay, I'm glad we sung that. Now I can move on. I would like to do the bio in your book for Brother Hrud. Robert Hrud, lock in, because this is quite an extensive bio, and he's well known in the community. And so let me go through it. Robert Hrud, Sr. is a retired teacher, principal, mentor, counselor, and motivational speaker. Mr. Hrud is a native of Jackson, and we're not going to hold that against you. A native of Jackson, Michigan, and a graduate of Jackson Parkside High School. After high school, Mr. Hrud earned his associate's degree at Jackson Community College. It was during this time Mr. Hrud grew a remarkable 9 inches. He now had the height to play his favorite sport, basketball. Mr. Hrud went on to Grand Valley State University, yay, Lakers, where he played basketball for the 1970 and 1972 basketball team. He also earned his Bachelor's of Arts degree in education and was recognized in the Grand Rapids Press as one of the top 10 graduates of Grand Valley in 1972. Mr. Hrud earned his master's degree in guidance counseling from Western Michigan University in 1977, and he also played semi-professional ball. Mr. Hrud has worked at every level during his career in education. He is an adult education teacher, a counselor, a college admissions administrator, Upward Bound director, elementary school principal, high school assistant principal, charter school principal, educational consultant, and janitor. I'm kidding. At every level in his career, he's been a passionate advocate for students. Mr. Hrud's life is an excellent example of what can be achieved if you believe in yourself and work hard to achieve your dream. He was once told by a high school counselor that no college would accept you, and if you do, you won't graduate. Well, God's grace and support of his family, Mr. Hrud proved his doubters wrong. It is now his mission to let students know, if I can make it, you can too.
What we want to do today is not have simply a presentation, but what we want to do is have a community dialogue. So these are our panel of experts, but just like they're setting up before you, these 4, there's another 20 people in the audience that I see that have been up here before and that could just as easily be up here as these gentlemen are. They're experienced, but also you're experienced as well. We've got principals in the office, in the house, in the congregation, parents, grandparents, teachers, administrators, counselors. We've got a variety of different experienced people right out there who have questions and who also have solutions. How many of you adults in the audience have a child that's already graduated from college? How many of you adults? Raise your hand. Okay, see, there's at least 20 of you out there. How many of you young people that are in the audience are currently college students? How many college students do we have in the house? Okay, 1, 2, okay, we have about 3 or 4, okay. How many of you are high school students? Okay, there's a good 20 there. How many middle school students? Any elementary students? Okay, we're mainly middle school, high school, college, parents, grandparents, which is great. Lorenzo Bradshaw, principal of Brookwood Elementary School. He has devoted the past 18 years of his career as a teacher, trainer, mentor, child advocate, and administrator. His life has been committed to serving youth, families, and the community. He spends his leisure time studying education practice all over the world. Recently, Lorenzo participated in a fellowship that afforded him the opportunity to study in several Asian countries. He's visited the Caribbean islands, Canada, China, Africa, Korea, 41 of the 50 states in the United States. Also enjoys collecting art from across the world, cooking, reading, and working out. He loves God and serves at Pilgrim Rest Missionary Baptist Church as a youth leader. He also serves as a volunteer for Big Brothers Big Sisters. He is a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Grand Rapids Alumni Chapter. Lorenzo Bradshaw. Clarence McCoy. Clarence currently works as a behavioral specialist for Kentwood Public Schools. He worked for Grand Rapids Public Schools as an assistant principal, dean of students, family, and student support specialist prior to transferring to Kentwood Public Schools. Clarence also taught at the Detroit Advantage Academy. He's a graduate of Michigan State University, where he majored in sociology and psychology. He received his master's in education from Grand Valley State University. His journey in education began in special education. He worked with students with disabilities, where he quickly learned the value of hard work and perseverance. He observed students with emotional, physical, and cognitive disabilities achieve on sheer effort, while other students regressed. Clarence furthered his education to empower others. He believes education to be a powerful tool for those willing to yield it or wield it. Clarence McCoy. Parris McMurray, quote, "The goal for each day is to be better than you were the day before," end of quote. Parris McMurray lives this motto every single day. He believes in the principle of learning from your mistakes and making better choices from what you've learned. He currently serves as a youth pastor at Renaissance Church of God in Christ in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where his father is the lead pastor, head pastor. He works hard to push young people to become beacons of light, the beacons of light God has called them to be. Born and raised in the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan, he is a proud alumni of Grand Rapids Public Schools and currently serves as the district administrator in the Community and Student Affairs Department. He's a graduate of Michigan State University, where he earned his bachelor's degree in sociology. Parris has the privilege and responsibility of motivating today's youth to reach their full potential through living a positive lifestyle and making an impact on the society that they're part of. Parris McMurray. And I don't have a bio for Mr. Isaac Watts Jr., but I can tell you that I've watched him grow up in this church. He is a strong young man. He's a good young man. I've watched him do the same thing I did when I was his age. He had his stumbles, but he didn't fall down and stay down. When he fell down, he got back up. He started listening even more closely in church. He started listening to our pastor and pastor emeritus. He started listening most importantly to his parents. He's matured into a great young man. He's now a sophomore in college. And, you know, we're as proud of him as can be, and we know that great things lie ahead for him. Isaac Watts Jr. If it looks like I'm limping a little bit, I walked out into my garage last night with my, in my stocking feet and slipped and fell down 3 steps. And when I looked over, I was looking at my truck tire, and I thought, you know, glory be to God, because I didn't break anything. I'm a little bumped and bruised, but I didn't break anything, and for that, I'm pleased. Okay, again, what we want this to be, friends, is a dialogue. So some of the questions and comments that we raise up here will touch on things that you're interested in, or things that you want to hear said, or things you want to talk about. And sometimes we won't exactly touch on something that you would like to talk about. I ask you to limit your comments in that if you've got a specific issue or beef with a school system or an institution or a university, we can't solve a specific problem that your child got kicked out because they brought a gun to school or something like that. We can't, we can't straighten something like that out in a 45-minute session. There are resources in this session that will talk to you after the session, but that's not something that we can solve just going back and forth. So the questions that you ask, make sure they're questions that we can come up with some comments or solutions to, so that we can all benefit. Again, we're not the only authorities or experts in the House. I know that there are many, many here. What I did was I just wrote down 4 short questions as discussion starters, just to have our panelists, get on board and start giving us some comments. Do we have another mic? Right here. Okay, we do have another mic. We have a young man in the back that when you raise your hand and you want to make a comment, he'll bring the mic to you. I ask that you limit your comment to, under a minute if you can, and then we'll give a panelist an opportunity to respond to that comment, or even other audience members. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of these gentlemen a question. I'm going to start out with Brother Watts. Baptism by fire, my brother. And the question I'm asking you, Isaac, is what role does peer pressure play when it comes to trying hard in school versus going every day to try to be popular with your friends and just have fun? What role does peer pressure play in choosing to be smart versus choosing to be popular?
I mean, coming from an athlete's perspective, I had a lot of friends who always told me school wasn't really important, but when you have peers who, if you can see it in their future that they might be not going the same places you are, you can definitely have the heart of struggle to kind of go that way so that they're not alone. Mm-hmm. But if you know that somewhere down in your future you could go somewhere, whether that's MSU or, go play ball somewhere, go into the league, if you know that it takes good grades to get there, then you have to be able to surround yourself with the peers that are going to help you get to your end goal. And if you don't have the peers that's going to help you get to your end goal, then you're going to end up going down the line of the opposite. So if you surround yourself with people who do drugs, smoke, underage drinking, that's what you're going to end up doing. But if you surround yourself with other people who have the same end goal, want to go somewhere, want to get out of where they're at, and want to do something better than what they have seen or have been seeing, then you will definitely be able to make the steps forward to closer towards success as well as life.
Excellent comments. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. One of our past speakers that we had here was a gentleman from Chicago named Juwanza Kanjufu, and he's published probably about 24 books. One of them is called To Be Popular or To Be Smart, the Black Peer Group. And what he does is basically say the same thing that Isaac says, is that if you don't watch it, kids, you can get hung up hanging with kids who don't have the same dreams that you have. And if they don't have the same dreams that you have, they're not going where you're going. It's been said that birds of a feather will flock together. If they're doing bad things, you'll be doing bad things. On the other hand, if you're with kids who are doing what you're doing, you guys are pushing and encouraging each other to go in the same direction. Positive peer pressure can occur just like negative peer pressure can occur. Brother McMurray, in your bio you mentioned motivating today's youth to reach their full potential through living a positive lifestyle. Can you speak more on living a positive lifestyle and give us an idea what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Pastor Smith and to the entire committee for giving us this opportunity to be here and have this conversation. I'm excited about sitting on this panel with these fine gentlemen this morning and to have this conversation with you all. But when I think about a positive lifestyle, it really connects to what Brother Isaac was saying about peer pressure, right? Because a lot of times, unfortunately, we think that peer pressure is negative, right? When we hear the word peer pressure, we automatically associate a negative connotation with that. But living that positive lifestyle is really surrounding yourself with people that will help you get to that positive lifestyle. When I say positive lifestyle, making decisions and making choices that will impact your future positively, right? If you know that making one particular choice will lead you down this path, then you probably need to reconsider going down a different path. When you talk about a positive lifestyle and being an impact on your society, what value are we bringing to our society, our communities that we live in, our families that we reside in, our homes, our schools? What value are you adding? If someone from the outside was to come in and say, Brother Hrud, what are you doing to add to the society of Messiah Baptist Church, right? Being able to answer that question to show that you can add value, right? Either through your leadership, either through your advocacy, either through just the way, the example that you are setting every single day for another young person or another man or another woman that might be in your circle. So the biggest thing is when you talk about, or when you ask to expound on a positive lifestyle, what value are you adding to your community that you currently reside in?
Great, great. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And young people who are still in K-12, you people who are in middle school and high school, that is a critical question for you. When you look at your household, how are you making your household better? You look at your classroom, how are you making your classroom better? You look at your school, how are you making your school better? How are you contributing to your church? How do you contribute to your neighborhood? Do the old people, when they see you coming down the street, do they go in and lock their doors? Or do they see you and smile and wave at you? Because they know that you're a positive member of the community. My next question is for Clarence McCoy. What effect do you think the introduction of culturally relevant material could have on classrooms made up of majority Black and brown students? And what do we mean by the expression culturally relevant material?
Well, first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Ethel Carter and Mr. Leroy Tucker for inviting me to this conference. And like Brother Parris said, it's just a wonderful opportunity and a privilege to be able to contribute to the community. So when you talk about cultural competence in the school in relation to African Americans and our culture, I think it's a really big issue, because in society, and the pastor did a very good job talking about it this morning, is that we face very unique challenges, and not everybody understands our challenges. For example, our young kids growing up playing with dolls that don't look like them. When we walk into society, we see a society that's not always welcoming and oftentimes presents hostility. So when you come into school and our young people are not aware of our rich and proud history, it presents a problem because it affects their confidence level. So when young people go into school, they need to see people that look like them, that walk the path that they walk. And to see us in schools, it's an amazing thing, because we can connect to those kids and help take them to the next level. So when they understand that their history is proud, and that oftentimes a lot of kids come to school and they feel inferior. So when you talk about cultural competence, you talk about these kids' health, their well-being, and their ability to be able to withstand the challenges they're going to face. One of the things that I think is really important to our young people is to have that sense of pride. So when they go into schools and they run into challenges, that they know they're going to have the support to be able to do what they need to do to be able to overcome the obstacles that they're going to face. So in schools, we talk about Black history once a month. Black history is every day. Our culture and our contributions haven't been recognized completely. So it is very important that teachers come to school with an emotional IQ, that understand the challenges that our kids face, to be able to understand that and convey to young people that we care more about you than what you did. If you're having problems, to be able to let those kids know, I'm not going to give up on you even if you give up on yourself.
Man, thank you, sir. Thank you. When we look at the whole area of cultural competence, a lot of it has to do with who's writing the books. There are, I think there are upwards of 40,000 books published in our country every year, and of those 40,000, only about 300 or 400 of them have covers on them or pictures on the cover of them that look like us. So only about 2% of the books that are being published are about our story, about the lives that we live. So some of you that are young people in the audience, or not so young people in the audience, think about writing, think about publishing. We need someone to tell our story. One of the African writers said that the hunter will always be glorified until the lion has its own biographer. You know, so who's telling the story? How are we portrayed? Rick. Yes, sir. Doctor?
Good morning. My name is Rick Stevenson. Following up on what I just said, 1% of the American population has PhD. 85% of what we read are written by that 1%. And within that 1%, over 88% of them are white males. So when you begin to look at the documents that are being used in our elementary schools, junior highs, and high schools, most of those books are written by white men who have a different agenda. So therefore, we're not going to see our pictures on front. Only 3% of the world's population have PhD. So it just goes to show you how much information that we're reading that has nothing to do with us at all. So that's why we encourage you to go beyond the bachelor's degree, beyond the master's degree, and get to the doctorate level, because that way we have access to primary source documents so we can begin to write more about ourselves.
Amen, brother. Amen. Amen. Before I introduce Brother Bradshaw, that brings me to one other point. Every household should have a home library. Every household. When I was a young kid, when I was in middle school, and I used to go visit my friends, every time I walked into a house, I'd see the good book. I'd see a Bible on a table. I might see an ebony or a jet, but I'd see some reading material that was about us in every household I went into. When I worked as an elementary principal, as a high school administrator, as a college administrator, if I ever visited homes, I didn't see books anymore. After about 1980, I stopped seeing books. So what I'm really proposing is that if you don't have a home library, if you're a parent or a grandparent, don't just buy that boy basketballs, footballs, frisbees, softballs. Buy him some books, and buy him some books with some faces on them that look like them. All right? Make sure they have some reading material. Make sure they have some reading material about their culture, about their history. Lorenzo Bradshaw, principal of Brookwood Elementary in Kentwood. Lorenzo, my question to you is, you've traveled to a dozen or so countries outside the USA. Have you seen any educational ideas that might be effective here that were effective over in those locales that maybe we need to bring here and give a try here?
Yes and no. The one thing that is unique about America is that we educate all children. And in other countries, they don't. So kids with special needs don't get education or limited education. And then for many countries that I've visited, education goes to probably 8th grade. Everyone doesn't have access. It takes resource to have access. That's the beautiful part of education. So when we compare testing, you're not really comparing apples to apples, because we educate everyone in most countries. A lot of countries do not. The one practice that is successful, no matter what country I visited, including the United States, is that whole village concept. It takes the village to raise a child. When everyone invests in children, children are successful. So many times we want to blame the parents. So many times the parents want to blame the school. School want to blame the board members. But when everyone's working together, our children will and can be successful. And that transcends any culture, any language, any color. It transcends all. And so again, that whole village concept, it's our responsibility to ensure that our children are successful. Children have a right to dream, and it's every adult responsibility in this room and in this community to ensure and support those children in making their dreams come true.
Thank you, Brother Bradshaw. When I asked earlier how many of you have children that are college grads, about a dozen or so of you raised your hands. Now I know that of the dozen or so of you that raised your hands, you also have nieces and nephews in your family. Your children made it through college, and sometimes if those nieces and nephews are going to make it through, it takes you. Sometimes, even though that's not your kid, that's still your niece and nephew, you got to reach back and grab them. Sometimes as grandparents, if your kids are not doing it, Yeah, they may be 25, 35, even 45. Sometimes it's grandparents. If your kids are not doing it, grandma, grandpa has to take that kid to the museum, take them to the library. Yes, sir, but comment? Microphone, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Looking at our neighbors to the east and the west, Detroit and east and Chicago and the west, where they have all African-American male academies, and they've had success with those academies. Can you speak to why we don't have something like that here in Grand Rapids, or do we think that it may not work in Grand Rapids? Because they found a way to educate, and they have high 90% graduation rates.
College graduation. College
graduation rates too. So why haven't something like that even, because it's such a small sample of African Americans here in Grand Rapids, about 14%. Seem like the success could be measured really well or very easy here. So could we speak on something like that?
I think one of the bigger challenges of, I think, creating an African American school is ideal. But let's start with just getting African Americans in education. The majority of my staff, and let me be clear, and I am intentional in recruiting African Americans, but we are the minority. In my district, in the elementary schools, we have one African American male teacher in the entire district. So I think it starts with, how do we get African Americans interested in going into the field of education? It's an extremely limited pool of African Americans that are even going into teachers. But I do contend that there are African American men in the communities that are making great contributions. And I just challenge you to stop by the schoolhouse every once in a while. Our churches are full of men. And I encourage the church to stop by. So, because it goes back to Clarence's question about cultural competency. It's good to read about books, but it's also good to see positive black men outside of the athletes and the actors that are making a difference in the community. So the challenge is, and to be honest, I've been a principal for multiple years, and one of the biggest resources is the church. And that's who I see the least of. I'm telling you, the Presbyterians, the Catholics, we're Big Mama Church. We're the Baptists. I'm Baptist raised, and it would just be a contribution, a great contribution, if the church could continue, the church and partnership with the community, to be more intentional and letting our young black students see African Americans. The school is the next level, but let's just start with just making education look more of an attractive career for blacks, and that's just a good place to start.
Clarence or Parris or
yeah, I'd like to add on to that. So, right, here's the thing. We started off talking about this young man, young Isaac, and peer pressure and the things that he has to overcome, and how does a young person do that? So when we look at our community and we ask that question, and I just give a lot of thought to that, and one of the things that I think is that we can't look to the people who created our problems to solve our problems. So we talk about curriculum. When our young people go into school, the books that they read, and the gentleman did a very good job talking about that, there are so many untold stories. There's so much collective wisdom in our history that's being lost that is truly frightening. So when he talks about having PhDs and people writing books and telling our stories, our kids don't even see the tip of the iceberg of how powerful, how strong that we are. There are just so many unbelievable stories that haven't been written, that haven't been told, that books are in books that aren't even in libraries yet. So when we can come up with a cultural competent curriculum that speaks specifically to us, and I'm not just talking about the A, B's, and C's, the academics, I think for us to really be able to do that, that we have to own our own education. Our young people's hands, and especially our young men, their futures, the next 12, 13 years of their education is going to affect the quality of the rest of their lives. Think about that for a moment. And also think about the fact that the majority of these young men, and I say young men specifically because that's what the question was about, the majority of their lives are in the hands of young white women. So what do they bring in, and what biases, and not all are biased, but I'm just saying we live in a society, and I don't need to tell anyone today what's going on in our world, that our culture, we can't bury our heads in the sand and say that our culture and our families are not under attack. Our kids face risk just coming to school. For example, a minority child, a migrant student may come to school dirty because his parents are being exploited. He may live in an unfit house where there is no water. He may come to school with his face dirty, and if a person doesn't understand that culture and doesn't understand exploitation in society, that young man and his family will face further persecution because they will become a ward of the state through systematic persecution. So until we own our education, we're not going to run on all cylinders. So I'm a very strong proponent of developing schools where we write the curriculum, where we control the board. Grand Rapids, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I am, Grand Rapids is one of the worst cities economically for black people in the United States of America. Imagine for a moment the power, the economic power, the educational power that we possess if, for example, we were to say we're going to educate our own kids. We would be able to provide jobs where people come in from outside of our community, take that money, undereducate our kids, and leave before the school buses leave. Okay? So, what if we had a school filled with our teachers, with those checks coming into our homes and our income recontributing to our community instead of paying other people to undereducate and persecute our kids and go home early?
Another comment by Dr. Stevenson.
Clarence.
Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, he's a social psychologist, did a study about 15 years ago entitled Contradicting the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. And what he discovered was that the way the educational system is designed, especially with white female teachers with black boys, by the time our black sons get to the 4th grade, they are threatened. The teachers are threatened by their size,
yes,
by their aggression, and their unwillingness to sit still because they want to learn. And so by the time they get to the 6th grade, they no longer want to go to school because they're sent to the back of the class, they're condescended to when they're asking questions, and then we begin to run away from education. And then we start hearing things like, I don't want to learn how to read anymore. When in fact, one of the first things we tried to learn on the plantation was how to read.
Yes,
so
sir.
how did we get to that point? It's because some of the people who are teaching our sons see them as a threat. And I'll close in a minute. And they also discovered that the prisons that are being built in our communities or in our country are directly connected to how many young black boys will not make it through the 7th grade. So we got to make sure we get them before they get to the 5th grade, because the system is designed to incarcerate them.
I would go a step further, and I don't mean to interrupt, but from my understanding, when the state conducts educational testing, and if kids aren't proficient in reading by the 3rd grade, so we say 3rd grade, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 6, 7, 8 years later, they're projecting how many prisons to build in the state of Michigan based on 3rd grade illiteracy rates. So just think about that for a moment. We need to create an educational safety net that's built with redundancy to save these kids. Education is a form of freedom for us. It always has been, and like he talked about, first thing we needed to do was be able to learn how to read. And now we have young people fighting education. We have so many obstacles, it's unacceptable.
I know that we have a comment, Mr. Hrud, but I just want to add in the reason, Brother Tony, what you were saying, that why those schools are successful. One of the main reasons that I think is because it teaches black boys to be proud of their identity and recognize what their identity is. I had the privilege of being a part of the African American Male Youth Conference a few weeks ago, and all of the young men down there, there was not one young man who was disruptive. It was about 1,000 of them in there. Not one was disruptive, but that's their label, disruptive. Not one of them was aggressive, but that's their label, right? That none of them was aggressive. That not one of them was play fighting. And I deal with suspensions all the time, and I look at the top 2 or 3 offenses why black boys get suspended: disrespect to staff, disruption in the classroom, and play fighting or showing some form of aggression, right? when we have been told that that's the identity of the black boy, black man, then unfortunately there are all these systems in place that help support perpetuating that identity, right? But when you have a school in Chicago that has a 95% college graduation rate, when you have a school in Harlem, when you have a school, right, that teaches specifically to what the black man's identity is, and I think Pastor Smith, you talked about it earlier, our history goes further than, right, slavery, and understanding why young men and how young men get this concept of just slavery and that's it, but helping them to understand that they are royalty and they are kings and that we are, right, that we have all of these positive things about our identity. That's why they're successful. So to what you were saying, Brother Bradshaw, about making sure that we're in the building just to simply let them see that this is your identity, not what that teacher has labeled you to be.
And one thing, can I...
Comment by Pastor Smith.
Comment and a question. Yes, sir. Very good information. I think I'm more solutions focused. And my question would then be, being that I think it's safe to say that it's hard for us to create a safe identity within someone else's household.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. That's what you said.
How hard is it to create our own school? That's the question.
I personally don't think it would be hard at all. I think it would take, I listened to us singing the song and we talked about harmony and unity. I think it's first going to start there. We have a lot of different agendas even within our African American community within Grand Rapids, right? Because of different factors, because of different things that exist. But it's first going to take some unity, Pastor Smith, about us all getting together and recognizing that that's something that we need to start and that's something that we need to develop. Because if I'm mad at you because you drive a certain car and I don't, I'm never going to start a school with you. Guaranteed, right? And while we're fighting over our cars, we got this young brother right here who's trying to figure out who they are, but no, we too caught up in our cars, right? And I just use cars just as an anecdotal example. But the thing is, it's going to take all of us collectively getting to the table and saying, this is what we need to do. We see the value in it. We see how powerful having black men teaching black men, right? Another thing, I went through school and I probably had 4 or 5 African-American teachers through my K-12 experience. There are a lot of young men, even older men. I remember talking to you, Mr. Hrud. You had what, 1 until you got to college?
I had 1 in grad school and 0 K-12.
So then how do we get black people, right, to go into education? That's a question that I think that we need to ask as well.
I just want to piggyback off of that piece because I'm all about being solution driven as well. And it goes, for me, and in my experience, I know that in partnership with curriculum, even before you get to curriculum, you have to have a relationship. Children don't learn from people they don't like.
Yes, yeah.
And so, or who they feel don't like them. And so with that, and that's coupled with, you have to be able to connect with children. You can put all the curriculum, and that transcends color. Mm-hmm. That transcends color. They don't, I mean, you black and you don't respect children, they're not gonna like you.
Exactly.
And so I just believe that piece of just connecting and building relationships only enhances curriculum. But we don't, a lot of times we wait as a community, the school is solely responsible for educating the child.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's one of the biggest misconceptions. Children learn more from the age of birth to 5 than most of our life. They are sponge. And so what we're doing with children, and the other piece is that we have to stop blaming parents, connect with parents, and educate parents on what's the right thing to do. I mean, a lot of parents had bad experiences with their educations themselves, so school is not a good place for them. So being intentional in supporting our parents as well. And I'm not just talking about the school, I'm talking about the community. And also, and this is another piece that so often we neglect, and this is rhetorical, but how many, with these young people in the audience tonight, I'm talking to you young people, and this is rhetorical, so don't raise your hand, don't stand up. How many fathers are in the home? Because I grew up in a house without a dad. As a matter of fact, when I got to college and I saw most of my friends had dads, it was like alarm. It was like I was reading the Guinness Book of World Records. Like, you got a dad in the home? That was not my story. And while my mom was raising 5 boys solo, I didn't even see, Mr. Hrud was one of the men that I saw, but I didn't get to him until I was in high school. There were no men. And as I look around this congregation, and I look around this community, and I go to all of the big dinners, the NAACP, and all these awards, there are lots of men there. Where are those men in the lives of these children every single day in these schools? I just think that we can be more intentional, and I'm about solutions. So what can we do right now? Do I see a school? Would I buy into a school, all African Americans? Absolutely. But then I would even question, how many of us would even bring our kids to school? How many of us support black businesses? Let's just start there. And so, what can we do right now in the lives of these children that are sitting right here in this audience? Build relationships, connect. Start right here tonight. Don't walk by a kid and not speak. It starts today. It's little things you can do today, right now, to invest in the lives of these children sitting in this room right now. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, I would just
Sister right here has a comment. I want to let her get a chance to speak because she's been standing for a while. Do you have the mic, sister?
It's actually a question, because a lot of times we get together and as professionals we talk about what our young people need and what the community needs, but I'd like to see us be more talking with them and finding out from them what are the things that we can do as a community to help them. One of the things that I've heard constantly from several young people is that college is not for me. What if, I want to ask the panel, do you agree that college is not for everyone, or do you disagree? And if so, why or why not? Because I like to think that these are the type of things that we need to be answering, that are questions that they have in the back of their mind that are reserved, that's not taking them to that next level. We're talking about books in homes, but there's some kids that don't even have that. Their parents, right. College was not a thing for their parents, and they all right, so I'm gonna be all right. My parents smoke, drink, and they good people. What's the problem if I do that? So they don't see what we want them to see. So a lot of it is finding out those questions, hidden things that are stopping that progress. And I know one question is that question there that I hear frequently. So I want another brother to answer that question. College ain't for me, or college ain't for everybody. What is your response to that?
To the question of is college for me or not, I think it's a yes or no question. One thing that my mom taught me, and my mom is a high school teacher, she is also African American, and she is actually hands down one of the greatest people in my life who has actually taught me about education. I just so happened to have the honor of having my mother as one of my English teachers my senior year. No, I did not get an A in that class. But one thing that she taught me was college is not for everybody. But selling drugs is not supposed to be the #1. It shouldn't even be on the list. There's schools, if you go through school, one thing that I learned is school is set up as a factory. People are set up in lines, you're sitting in a row, and you're basically just passing things as you go. And for some of you who have worked in factories, that's how it is. You work on a factory line, things just go straight down the line. So, one thing that my mom did was she didn't put desks in her classroom. She put tables and chairs. It was tables all in a circle, and everybody just had a seat. You just come in, you take a seat, you learn what you had to learn, and we straight. And one thing about that question is, yeah, you might not want to go to school, going through school, there's military, there's jobs out there that you can go and apply for, and you can just work there full time. You can always make money. There's always ways that you can do it. I mean, if you want to go to school to further your education, to put yourself in a more of a successful situation so that you can be able to put more money in your pockets, be able to provide for your family, your children, your parents, your parents' parents, your grandkids, your great-grandkids. If you can put yourself in that situation, no matter how it goes, it will always be there for you. So is college or is school for everyone? No. But at the same time, if you think it's for you, take your shot. Go to GRCC, go to a community college where it's cheaper, so you're not going to a four-year university where you're paying 30, 40, 50, 60 grand a semester. You go to a college campus where you're only paying 2, 3 grand, so you actually can figure out, do I really want to go into school? Do I really want to go into sports management or psychology or education, or do I just want to go to work, or do I just want to go in the military? So
I think that oftentimes we just take so much for granted and we just assume that kids even know how to get there. When I graduated from kindergarten, my mom was graduating with me. And I was 5 and my mom was 30. She was graduating from high school. So my mom didn't know how to give me access to college. A lot of times we just assume kids know this stuff. And I just think that those of us who have graduated from college have a responsibility to make sure that we're educating schools, students, families on how to gain access. No, I contend that if I had known plumbers make as much as they can, my water heater went out yesterday, and I contend if I had known plumbers and electricians make as much money as I do as a teacher, an educator, but we have to give kids access. We have to educate them that there are skilled trades that you will make more money and have a more a better livelihood than some of us that have degrees. College is not for everyone, but are we being intentional in letting our young people know that there are other options? I'm not about jamming college down everybody's throat, but again, giving them exposure and educating them what's out here. And not only what's out here, but how to obtain it, and being intentional on this is what you need to do to get there, and providing, again, that level of support.
I think the important thing, I know someone had a question, I'll make it quick. I think the important thing is making sure that our young people have aspirations to reach the next level, right? And by any vehicle they use to get to that next level, that's what we need to make sure that we're putting in front of them. So if that vehicle is college, right, giving access to college.
Sure.
If that vehicle is, we live in a very unique time with technology and social media and everything like that. So if the vehicle is there for them to tap into some of that technological capabilities, then we need to make sure that we're getting them behind the camera, getting them, the brother who made Black Panthers, 31 years old, right? Started as a college athlete, wanted to play at the next level, but he decided to start writing, connected with his English teacher, right? That was access for him. Okay, so even though he went through college and his aspiration was to be an athlete, right, he was exposed to writing. He was exposed to different things. And now this brother is one of the most successful directors, right, in the history of Hollywood, simply because he had access. So there needs to always be the introduction of an aspiration to get to the next level by whatever vehicle that is.
Let me also throw in, is the mic over here? Where's the mic now? Okay, let me also throw in one other thing about we score in 10. If we are promised 70 years of life in the Bible, should we make our life plan based upon what looks good when we're 10? Or based upon what looks good when we're 15? Or should we maybe take a look at the 70-year-olds in our family and try to work backwards? Mm-hmm. Grandpa, why did you do this? Why did you take that kind of work? Why didn't you go get more education? Why did you go to the military? Why do you work with your hands? Why are you buying all this property? How can we assure that our kids are prepared to be successful grandparents, to be successful parents, to be successful husbands and wives? How can we assure this if we don't have them looking at those people in their family who have successfully handled those stages in life. Have them take a look at that.
This is more in the form of a comment than it is a question, but I think the panel answered that question. But just to give you my background, college isn't for everybody. But I do believe I'm a strong advocate for higher education. Now I've got skilled trades, and I've done that since mid-70s. I'm a HVAC technician. I had 8,000 hours of training, of school and on-the-job training.
Can you tell us what those letters stand for again? HV?
Heating air conditioning technician. Yeah, heating air conditioning technician. I've done that. And there's not too many of us around. A couple of us, one brother that I worked with goes to Messiah as well. But 8,000 hours. Prior to that, I did have an associate's in marketing and sales, but then I did the apprenticeship, here in Grand Rapids at GRJC, at community college. And, but then after that, I wanted to continue pursuing, so I went ahead and got my bachelor's in business administration. So yeah, college may not be it, but I was influenced by the church and my parents. But I finally found my niche, and it was in the skilled trades. And I'm glad I did it, because I love it. And I'm still working. I should have been retired 10 years ago, but I still love what I'm doing. And so it's not for everybody, but there's beautiful programs. I'm working with a young fella now who just graduated from Parris in the same skilled trades. So that is available to you. But also you may want to get inspired like I did to go ahead and get your bachelor's degree, and that's what I did. So I got 8,000 hours of skilled trades and all the qualifications for a bachelor's degree.
More questions, comments? We've got more hands up. Can we move the mic to these other gentlemen?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve McLean. This question is more like a question for the community. What can we do as a community to retain our college graduates? Most of them have to leave.
Well, and
for anyone.
And the as a person who's been in education for 4 decades, I would say most of our students don't have to leave, but I think most of our students choose to leave. Grand Rapids, Michigan, this whole 131 corridor, Muskegon, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Benton Harbor, to me, it's not as progressive as the I-75 corridor. Saginaw, Flint, Pontiac, Detroit. We think of that side of the state, we think of it as being dangerous, having a whole lot of issues, but some of the top professionals in this state come off the I-75 corridor. Those kids get more opportunity when they're K-12, they get more opportunity when they graduate from high school, they get more opportunity when they graduate from college. Whereas when you look over here in Grand Rapids, it's identified as being one of the top 2 cities if you're white in America, but it's only behind Milwaukee for being one of the worst cities in the country if you're black. So in order for us to maintain or retain our young people who get their associate's, bachelor's, and master's degrees here, we got to ensure that they have some opportunities. If you go in a bank and you might see 1 or 2 black bank managers in the whole city, but you look at all the other people that are working in the bank and none of them look like us, our kids know there's a message there. If I prepare, am I still not going to get the job? So we've still got some discrimination barriers that we need to break down in this city that are huge. And those of us that speak to those barriers, sometimes it prevents us from getting promotions and so on. But I don't think we should be cowards about it, because what we're doing is we're arguing on behalf of our kids and their futures. But we want our kids to be able to stay here. Can we have the mic over here for...
Can I say one thing? Can I say one thing about that? When you say that you're trying to get them to stay, I'm in college and my degree is sports broadcasting, so I'm going into a communications major, but broadcasting as a specifics. And one thing that I had to do is I had to search, every nick and cranny of the internet to find jobs. And one place that I actually wanted to stay was in Grand Rapids. But as I was looking, I did not find any broadcasting firms that was sports affiliated within Grand Rapids. The closest one I saw was Kalamazoo. All the big ones, big time, where you're actually going to get some like airtime and you're actually going to see things, are all down south. So for me, as wanting to be able to watch sports for the rest of my life and being able to talk about it, no matter what kind of way I wanted to do it, whether it was radio, whether it was a podcast, whether it was TV, whether it was all three, my closest, if not Kalamazoo, is somewhere miles far out of Grand Rapids. So one thing, like Brother Hrud said, is there has to be opportunities. There has to be a way to find jobs and bring them. First, you have to bring them here. And second of all, try to get them to stay here. If you can't get them here in the first place, they're obviously not going to stay. But if you can find a way to get them here and stay here, then there's the way to create opportunities within their graduate fields to stay within the city.
So how many jobs would a school create? How many jobs would a school, for our young people who we outsource and advocate our responsibility for, how many jobs and spin-off jobs would a school in this community create? It would create a lot of jobs. It may not create a sports broadcasting job, but those skills are transferable, and maybe those jobs could be created in a different sense. Maybe our young people have to understand that they're not gonna, and I'm not saying that you wanna make the big money, and if you do, that's great, but maybe sometimes those jobs have to come back here and those jobs have to be created, and we all have to take a step back and a little less so that we gain that experience to have some ownership to be able to grow later.
I just think so often we solve problems from young people, but they don't have a voice in the solution. And I think that it's time that we start giving the young people a voice, because look at the way we grew up and look at the way they're growing up. It's a totally different dynamic. The way I was taught, and even the way I taught children when I was a teacher is not the way children learn necessarily anymore. It's a different mode. Same content, but it's a different way of educating children. And the one thing that I just think that we tend to neglect, I was riding with my mentee the other day, and he got in my car and he said, "Ooh, when I grow up, I want to be just like you." I said, "King, I want you to be better than me." And what he said to me next was just so moving and sad at the same time, because then he said, "I've never seen a black principal. There's not even black people in my school." Wow. So what do you do about it? What did I do about it? I started to go read in his classroom. Guess what? Now it is a black person. Now you will see. So often I get it why children, when I ask them, and I walk to classrooms and go from classroom to classrooms, and when you read their writing, what do you want to be? I want to go to the NBA. And I want you to go. And when you get there, don't forget me. But in the event that you don't make the NBA, what is your backup plan? And how many kids now say, "I want to be a principal, I want to be a teacher," and whatever other profession that you went to school, you got your degree, you got your skill trade, are you going and sharing that with children so that they can dream to become? You can't dream of what you've never seen. And so it's that piece of us going back and really having conversations with children, letting them see that they see Michael more athletes than they see professional black men, and they're professional black men in this community. Oh, I'm sorry.
In the interest of giving our young people a little bit of a voice, can I ask that the next 2-3 questions come from somebody who's between 5th grade and 12th grade? You young people, do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? We need to hear what you're thinking. Somebody who's between 5th grade and 12th grade, raise your hand and talk to us. And I know it takes some courage to do it. Young man up here in the orange. Thank you, sir.
Like you said, when everybody was talking about going to the NBA and stuff like that, and there's like a lot of people like within our community that talk about how they want to be rappers and all that type of stuff. Like they don't realize there's more than just being a rapper or a basketball player or a football player. Like Tupac said. He said we need more doctors, we need more lawyers, we need more people that's working within the system instead of like lowering your ability, extend your ability, think outside the box. And that's the comment I had to say.
Can you tell me, young man, what's your career goal? What would you like to become?
Social work.
Excellent. And there's social workers in this audience right now who can help you achieve that goal. Another young person. Can I have one more young person give us a comment, please?
I saw an article on bullying in school, and I wanted to know, is that real, or is that just publicity?
Oh, that's real. Yes, that is a real issue. That is a real issue.
Okay, here's a young man here who what?
Right up front.
He is from Gerald R. Ford Middle School.
I would say, yeah, bullying is an issue because kids in the okay.
Have you ever been bullied?
Well, not necessarily, but...
But have you've seen bullying go on?
Yeah, and I just feel like kids nowadays, they just feel like they could do what they want, and they don't really care what people say, but when they bully, after they see that the kid has been bullied and what's gone through, that they get the feeling like...
Maybe they shouldn't do it?
Yeah, they shouldn't have done it before.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for speaking up. Public speaking is one of the #1 fears in America. Brother McComb, can you? Okay, go ahead, young man.
Well, I was going to say, well, at the beginning of when our school first started, there was bullying, but we had to like cancel it out. So we had to send all those kids that weren't, you know, like caring about other people's feelings and being sympathetic. We had to send them to like another school, and now our school it's not, we don't have as much bullying as we used to, but when people do get bullied, we have to like I try to be a friend to them and try to like be nice, and yeah.
That's right. Good job.
There's one right next to him.
Another comment over here.
No, there's one right next to him.
Oh, there's one right next. Okay, good.
So, like my school is like really diverse.
Mm-hmm.
There's like Mexicans, like Latino, African Americans, but like the main thing is I know friends who like don't really bully, but they kind of pick on certain people. But like there's like one friend in every group who thinks about not bullying and trying to stick up for them, but because of most of the people they hang out with are on the side of bullying, they feel scared to stick up for the one person.
So the peer pressure is to bully instead of not bully, yeah. But you got to peer pressure them not to do it. There's another young man over here.
There's one right there too, the one in the jacket.
Stand up, please. Thank you.
How you guys were talking about bullying?
Louder.
How you guys were talking about bullying? Like, bullying's happening at our school, and like, it's mainly girls, and then I be trying to stick up for other people and telling them that when girls pick on you, that mean that they like you, so, and I be just trying to stick up for everybody that get bullied.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
He says when bullying occurs, he tries to stick up for the person and make sure that doesn't occur. When we start talking about self-esteem, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that if kids don't have a whole lot of clothes, if they don't have a big nice house, sometimes where do they get their self-esteem from? I'm the best athlete, I got the fastest words. I can talk about you and make everybody laugh and make you cry. I can bully you. I can pick on you. And so that's where their self-esteem comes from, instead of being leaders, instead of thinking about the future, instead of being good students. Yes, young man.
So my mentor, he was asking, my mentor, he's in the Marine, and I'm thinking about going to the Marine Corps too, but he's more worried about me and my life. So I got my reasons to go into the military, but he wants to know what's better, me getting an education or me just going off to the Marine Corps.
Okay, are there veterans in the audience who can speak to going in the military? I visited Camp Pendleton, and I was so impressed when I went and saw those guys graduate in the graduation ceremony. I thought, man, if I was that age, I would sign up. But I'll let one of our military vets speak to that.
Needs a battery. I think they turned it off. There's a battery.
It's on.
The battery's dead.
Should use this one?
All right, test. I'm unusual because I'm a combination of, I spent 4 years active and 28 years reserve. And I retired from the reserve program as a captain in the Navy, which is the same thing as a colonel in the Army. And I'm really, it was the best experience for my life. At that time, when I was a young kid, when I graduated from high school, I was not ready for college. I was not ready. I needed some maturation. I needed some growing. And the military gave me the opportunity to experience life, as well as some protection. And not everybody goes, one of the things one of the comments is that I'm going to be in a war. Not true. The bulk of the people in the military are not fighters. They're support people. And there are a whole lot of other jobs in terms of the military, if that's something that you're truly interested in. But for me, it really helped me grow and mature as a person. And I had a chance, I've had a chance to, I was in the intelligence community, and I had a chance to brief the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. I mean, I've had a chance to meet people that I would never have ever in my life imagined that I could have been meeting and talking to and interacting with. So if you ask me, you really know what you want. It's not, just like I said, college is not for everybody. The military is not for everybody.
Just, yeah.
Right here. I just want to say real quick about the military. I've been in for pretty much going on 4 years, and I've loved every minute of it. I love my unit. I love the whole part of it. I'm actually in the Army. But one thing I would say, as far as education over military, if I had to choose a different path of going into the military, I would have gotten a degree first and then joined the military. Because a lot of these successful officers, in order to be an officer or a sergeant in the military, they now require you to have some sort of degree. So now that's going to stop me from trying to stay in and get my sergeant, because I don't really have a degree yet. So if you're thinking about the military, don't overlook education first, because that's going to help you have a great career in the military.
Go ahead, young man.
What do the teachers do about bullying? About the bullying that goes on?
The most important thing as a student that's being bullied, and we got to realize that bullying doesn't just take form. Bullying looks different now. You got the bullying in school, but there's also social media bullying, and I find a bigger issue with the text messages, the KIK, Facebook, Musically. Our kids are being bullied on these modes. The best thing that you can do, young man, and I just encourage you, because as an educator, we can't fix what we don't know, and so often, because of peer pressure, kids do not want to tell. So if you know that somebody's being bullied, or if you're being bullied, you have to report it. say something. If you see something, say something. If it's happening, say something. We are mandated. The law requires us to address bullying, but a lot of times it goes untold, and that's the hurtful piece. See something, say something.
And it doesn't make you weak, young man, if you say something. Not at all.
You have to tell us.
And it don't make you a snitch either.
No. And it doesn't feel good, and you're being proactive and you're helping if it's happening to you and you tell, we can address it. If you see it happening to others, don't sit back and watch it happen and not say something. Because it's them today and it could be you tomorrow. If you see something, say something. Tell somebody.
Sir? I have a observation. I've been able to work in the public schools for the past couple years, and that's not my main profession, but it gave me some insight into so many different dynamics that teachers face. I come from a criminal justice background. My skills from criminal justice allow me to be very proficient in the schools. It's not even about educating at this point, it's about behaviors. I don't even know how some of the teachers are even able to teach. I have absolutely no clue. And I use some of my skills, and so I'm gonna pass them on to you real quick. After I make a community observation, one thing about our community, what we do, we take our favorite, let's pretend each of us is a restaurant, and we have our favorite dish. When we have something, we want to throw it at everybody else like they have to take it too. And that's not how you present anything. In 2018, you have so many diverse children that you cannot bring your psychology or the way or your worldview to the table on how to resolve an issue. Because you have as you already know, you have little Muslim kids at the school, you have kids of diverse backgrounds and certain beliefs. And the whole goal, one thing that Mr. Bradshaw pointed out, was that we educate all children. And see, all kids won't adapt to the way that you talk to them, the way that you bring to them. Even like I was reading one of the pamphlets, it was referring to cocaine. And cocaine is very detrimental and whatnot. But we are dealing with kids right now who are taking pills. They are taking lean. They are taking the drug culture is at an all-time high on a whole different level. So one thing I do with some of the students I have, I give them Takis. And you may say, well, what is he talking about?
Oh, they love Takis.
I give them Takis.
They know what who know what Takis is?
I didn't like Takis. I'm an adult. I did not like Takis. I thought Takis, and I'm going to explain this and sit down. I thought Takis were horrible, okay? They were horrible. But it wasn't about me. It was about the kid. I wanted to give the kid an incentive to do the right thing. And all the kids kept saying was Takis. I said, what are Takis? And once I found out what they wanted, then I merged it into what I wanted for them. I want you to sit down and get an education. I want you to not act up. I want you to not get kicked out of class. And guess what? I'm going to follow what I want with what you want. And we're going to work together. So guess what? Right now I got Takis in my truck. I've got Takis. I use Takis for my benefit. And actually what that really is, and I know you can speak to, this is psychology. It's operant conditioning, okay? We have been taught in so many different ways that we don't realize that our kids have been conditioned for a lot of their behaviors. And you have to break the conditioning with something else. Thank you very much.
One thing that
Look at the young people, think about them Takis.
My mom, one thing that I've kind of learned is my mom is an English teacher, and so she deals with all kids, either at risk or anything like that. And one thing that my mom does is when kids come to see her and they have issues or something like that, she actually takes the time out of her day and actually listens to them. And she sits down. There's been multiple times where I'll call my mom and I'm trying to get a ride home from work. I'm like, Mom, can you come get me? She's like, nah, I'm out at lunch with so-and-so. We just chilling. And it's just like, dang, now I gotta walk home. But it's just like, these teachers, most of the people think that these teachers don't want them to succeed, but I have had more teachers, including my mom, that has actually taken the extra step to help find kids and help them take steps towards furthering their education. She's gone out and found books in other libraries on scholarships, or different pathways of success, or different ways on how to learn, whether it was visually, physically, like other different ways of trying to figure out how to learn, she's gone out and taken the extra steps of figuring that out. And there are also other teachers out there that actually take that step. It's just the fact that we might need to find more of them.
Okay, Brother Moore, I guess you have a comment, and then Brother Tyrese has a comment, and then that'll be the final two comments.
Yeah, my name is Greg Moore.
Can you stand, Greg, so they know where you come from?
My name is Greg Moore, and I'm a teacher in Kentwood Public Schools. I'm a PE teacher. But I want to make a couple of observations that perplex me about our people. And one of them is the perspective a lot of our children have towards high achievement. And an observation I want to make about that is this. I've seen many awards assemblies where students are asked to stand up if you are on the honor roll this quarter, and about 65% of the students stand up. And the ones that are sitting down, I look at their faces, I recognize a lot of them from my own classes and from being mentioned in teacher meetings about students who struggle with their attention span, with attention-seeking behaviors, with getting referrals, with causing the referral number for their grade to be higher than another grade. And I see them look up at the honor roll students, and I hear comments like, "You think you something? You ain't nothing. Oh, you made the honor roll, so what? Who you think? You think you better than me now? You think you done something? All you doing is doing what they tell you to do." And with the connotation here is, how is it that you're following in what they're asking you to do, and I'm not, but I'm trying to make you feel bad about your achievement, but when we're in class, I got the attention on me. I'm the big guy, this person is delusional. I'm the big guy, you're the little guy, because I command everyone's attention. And what I observe about that is, how backwards is that? Why would you want to make a student who's achieving and doing what they're supposed to do, you're a consistent behavior problem or a production problem. You're not producing in your own right. You're causing your own performance to go down, but you want people who are achieving to feel bad about themselves so you can make yourself feel better in some way. What's the concept, or what do you think the issue is with that mentality?
I'd like to address that. I think one of the first things that you have to understand is that it takes a lot of courage for a young person to be able to withstand that. But I think what that student is saying, underlying what that student is really saying when he undermines another student, is he's saying, I will be less miserable if you fail with me. And that's something that we deal with in schools a lot of times. So those are those teachable moments that you have to really be cognizant of to be able to capitalize on and say, I love your learning courage. You create that type of culture in the classroom where kids aren't afraid to take risks. We talked about peer pressure.
That's right.
I've actually been fortunate and blessed enough to be able to impact that quite a bit, to be able to create classroom cultures where giving up because things are hard and difficult are considered cowardice. So in the classroom, you have the young men, second, third, and fourth graders, who are afraid to give up now because they don't want to be labeled a coward. So that can be combated. It has to be brought into the light, and it has to be met face forward. No negotiation.
And to also address that, Brother Moore, I would say that Pastor Smith, in a sermon about 4 weeks ago, said that hurt people hurt people. So when someone is hurting, misery loves company, and so what we have to train our students to do at a very young age is that you can't listen to everybody.
And I would just add one other thing about that. And the other thing that goes along with that is, with the learning courage, is the effort piece. The young people have to understand that a lot of times you get this mentality that it's hard, that I have to give up. Well, you look at video game designers, they don't design their games to be easy because they will be boring for young people. They're designed that you need to try 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9 times to make it to the next level. So the kids have the innate ability to be able to learn anything we require them to do. What is important is our belief system. So if a teacher believes that a kid can learn it, he's going to do everything in his or her power to learn it. As a former teacher, if a kid didn't learn it, I say you can learn it now or you can learn it at recess, but you're going to learn it. The question becomes, how generous are we with our time, demands, and expectation with our young people? Do we accept failure? No.
Tyrese, you have the final comment before we transition to our next activity.
Yes. I just want to probably end with what Lorenzo started with, and I think that it takes a village to raise a child, but I think it takes a village to form a community. I represent somebody who helped to start a charter school that got started but then failed. And so what happens is especially when you're trying to be an entrepreneur and you're trying to start a school as a black person in Grand Rapids, where mostly it's controlled by Dutch and they have all the power and all the access and all the resources, then we're limited to just trying to have black resources support a black-owned school. Well, that didn't happen. And then so because school systems cannot just survive off of state aid, you always have to try to do some type of fundraising, especially if you're going from a charter point of view. Then that becomes difficult if the community isn't rallied around to see something that y'all say that y'all want to see. So we always say like, yeah, that'd be good, but if it don't smell good and you ain't willing to invest or sacrifice, because again, we lost all our good teachers to Kentwood. Why? Because Kentwood is paying more. We lost some of our black teachers to Grand Rapids Public School. Why? Because they're paying more because they have a larger resource than just one black owned. So it doesn't happen if we don't never put community first. And so if y'all really want to see it, we have the blueprints to start a school, but are y'all willing to sacrifice for it? Because that's what it's going to boil down to. Thank you.
And until we get our black school for our African American men, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated has a mentoring program called Kappa League. We mentor African American men from 4th grade to 12th grade. And we beat the streets trying to recruit African American men. And we beat the streets trying to recruit African American men, and we maybe have 25. We got professional men that are willing to sow in the children. Michael Brown, stand up a minute. Michael Brown is the advisor of Kappa League. Again, we meet twice a month. If you're interested, please see Michael Brown. And also, I would be remiss if I would not thank God for my kindergarten teacher who's here today, Mrs. Ethel Carter, who taught me to read and write and provided my foundation. Thank you, Ms. Carter, a proud member of Messiah Baptist Church, and thank you all for allowing me to serve on this panel.
Amen. Let's give God a hand praise for our education panel. Amen. Oh no, we can do better than that. Amen. A lot of great information provided on today, a lot of great insight. Amen. So we certainly thank God for Brother Isaac Watts Jr., Parris McMurray, Clarence McCoy, Brother Lorenzo Bradshaw, and our very own Brother Robert Hrud. Amen. Amen. Let's give them another hand praise. Amen. Amen.